We're doing today's Shia, Zion Cheshvan. Kuf Mem Gimel Amud Beis. Kuf Mem Gimel Amud Beis. That's page 286. Now, this is a very interesting Yer Zakedesh because almost half the Yer Zakedesh is questions. He quoted the whole Raya Mehemne, and the Raya Mehemne said that now the Ikir is Eitz Hadas, Tevera, and therefore we have Shaychas to Klipa, and therefore Talmidei Chachamim eat from Erev Rav. That's what he says. When Mashiach comes, it's going to be Eitz HaChayim, and Talmidei Chachamim are no longer going to be fed by the Erev Rav. Talmidei Chachamim are going to be learning Eitz HaChayim. Well, the only people who are going to have a Shaychas to Tevera is the Erev Rav. So the Rebbe had a bunch of kashas. The basic question was that it sounded like from the Raya Mehemne that Nigel Teira is Klipa, that Eitz Hadas Tevera is Klipa. Teira the Chelik. And he goes on and on, proving and arguing that even the biggest Mukubal was supposed most of the time learning Nigle. And people put Teira before Tefillah, even though Tefillah is Yechudim. Rayas upon Rayas that you cannot say that in Teira there's Klipa. And then he asked a couple of more questions. L'chayru when Mashiach comes, we're still going to need to know Nigle. We're going to have to paskin about various different things. And then on the other hand, he brings that they were Talmidei Chachamim. That in the times of Bayesheni, we're not dependent on Amaratzim. They were independently wealthy or independently sufficient, and so forth. So the Alter Rebbe now begins his answer. And this Igeres HaKedesh is really an explanation of two things. Number one, the difference between Nigla Teira and Pnimiyas HaTeira. And number two, the difference between Teira Bizman Hazeh and Teira Liyasid Lovei. And I just want to remind you that the Alter Rebbe mentioned from Arizal that nowadays a muter or mitzvah legal is Eisa Chochma. This is the source of it. That it's a today to reveal Pnimiyas HaTeira is a mitzvah. Ach be'emet, says the Rebbe, the truth of the matter is, when you'll examine carefully the language of the Zayar, and this is the quote, the tree of good and evil, the iu iser veheter chuli, which is things that are prohibited and permitted and so forth. He doesn't say the teachings of what's prohibited and permitted, or halachas is veheter, the laws of is veheter. What you see from that is that you must distinguish between the Torah that talks about Tevara and Tevara itself. Or to use other words, is a difference between Eitz Hadas Tevara and Tevara. Where is there taka klipa and kedusha? The guf davara asav davara muter. The body, the things which is prohibited or permitted. Humilana the Tevara comes from the tree of good and evil. Shu klipas nego, which is klipas nego, k'meshikosa beitz chayim. Gashmias, even if it's kosher, it's from klipa. V'zeh lashon asur. And this explains the terminologies muter and asur. We had the same exact expression in Tanya Perek Zayin. That asur means sha'klipa sheid Allah, the klipa rests upon it. Ve'eini yachal la'aleis la'mayla, it's not able to ascend. Because the word asur, the Alter Rebbe translates it in Tanya Perek Zayin, kashur v'asur b'dei achitzenim. It's trapped. Because the word asur means locked up, like in jail. As opposed to kedavar muter, what's the translation of the word muter? That it's untied. The Hainu just means she'enei kosher v'asur b'klipa. It's not tied down and incarcerated, exiled in klipa. V'yuchal lalas, it's able to ascend, to rise up. Alei to the person who eats it. B'kavana through kavana, she go up lavai to the Yebishter. Like we had in Tanya Perek Zayin, when you eat kosher food, b'kavana l'shem shemayim, it goes up l'mayla. V'gam b'stam. Even if a person eats the food stam, and we had in Tanya Perek Zayin, lo yadifi, ma'isa diba machshava elu, minefesh abahamas beyatzma, which means to say, when you eat kosher food and you have no good kavanah or a bad kavanah, the eating is klipas nega. When you have a good kavanah, the eating becomes kedusha. A bad kavanah, it becomes, it's called in Tanya, yeded lefisha l'shalach with meis lagamri. Or if you have no kavanah, it remains klipa. However, so if you later serve the Eibishter, which means with the power of that eating, you later learn and daven to the Eibishter. So b'shas ma'aseh it remained klipa. Okay, v'nimtza as a result, shenasa eses haTeira v'atfila, the letters of Teira Tefillah, ha'oil Hashem, which certainly goes up to the Eibishter, was created, was energized, mikeach hanivrer mehamaychal hahu, from the power that was made clear through that food. So the food itself is elevated. So we're not talking about the Torah of Tevara, we're talking about the Mitzvahs of Tevara, good and bad. And by the way, it's also a very nice sugya in Tanya Reish Perek Mem, where the Alter Rebbe discusses Teira Shalei Lishma. we have to learn it over again to be Mailit LaHashem. And Al Derech over here, it's a bit of Eideler, because over there, the Torah itself is Alakus, it's not Par Chaliyela. Over here, we're talking about food. If you learn Tanya Perek Tes Perek Mem, you see that a mitzvah and Torah is Alakus. So you can't mess it up. You can give it a hard time, but you can't mess it up. In other words, when you have a mitzvah shlei b'kavana, so it doesn't go up. If you have a mitzvah with a bad kavana, so it's trapped in klipa. But once you redeem it from klipa, the mitzvah itself is alakus. Here we're talking about klipas nega. By itself, it's not alakus. But when you use it l'shem shamayim, it rises up. And then the Alter Rebbe says zel b'chayim. And the need b'chlal to eat with a kavana to elevate to the Eibush only during the week. Aval b'Shabbos on Shabbos, sheyesh aliyah leklipas nega b'yatzma. That klipas nega itself ascends with the periphery, with the outer dimension of all of the worlds. In other words, on Shabbos, the klipa itself is being sustained from Achshava. The sleep itself is Kedusha. It's a mitzvah to eat all pleasures on Shabbos. To eat meat and wine in abundance. That though during the week such a person would be called a glutton, on Shabbos it becomes a mitzvah. Right? And of course you know the mice which is brought in Shifchei Baal Shem Tov, that the Baal Shem Tov once saw a Yid eating chalent on Shabbos. So he called his Talmidim together, he told them to make a circuit, and instead of seeing a Yid eating chalent on Shabbos, they saw an ox and a shtraimo. Now the Rebbe used to repeat this story a lot and laugh. The Rebbe always would say ox and a shtraimo, like he's like a helik, he's like a Shabbos, but you're an ox. But if you look at Shifchei Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov did it l'malyusa, as a favorable thing. Look, he's so into his food that he's one with his food. But because it's Shabbos, it's mitzvah la'angor. The Rebbe once spoke a whole sikha, how could a person enjoy his food, but he's enjoying his food because God said so. Bottom line is, on Shabbos, food is tainu, it's alakus. Now, of course, you know the word from the Alter Rebbe's youngest son, Reb Moshe, with the Tzadik Nister. He ate bread and water every day of his life. So they asked him, what about Einik Shabbos? So he says, ich habe Kabbalah von Taten and alle mitzvahs. I heard from my father that any mitzvah which the body benefits from, you don't have to be extra religious, don't be mahadir. Okay? As opposed to something which is also if it's treif, and again the word asur means tie down, it cannot be raised up, not even on Shabbos. On Shabbos, lagamri is still klipa, it's only klipas nega which is redeemed. And during the week also. And the Alter Rebbe says in Reish Perek Ches of Tanya that gam kishem is palal v'leimid b'keichahi. Even if you ate treif food, you thought it was kosher, you ate it l'shem shamayim, then you use the energy of that food to serve the Eibishter, okay, it does not go l'mayla. Because treifa food cannot be elevated. Unless she'achal pikuach nefesh, you ate it because you were in danger. She'etiru razal, the zal were matir, and the Alter Rebbe uses it, says a very big chiddush, v'nasa heter gomer, becomes complete heter. You guys will learn in Mitzvah and Yeshiva. It is a very big shaila about dvarim asurim, which become mutter for various reasons, whether you say hutcha or tchuya, hutcha or hutra. Lamashal, hutcha means pushed away, or hutra, it became permitted. The gabi de beis hamikdash. Yeah, the din is that can't go to beis hamikdash unless you're tamei. If the whole community is tamei, so then you bring karbanas betumah. But the lashon v'chazal is tumah hutcha betzibur. The tumah pushes away the tzibur pushes away the tumah. But there's a shayla lagabi other things where they say hutcha or hutra. Here's a perfect example. In a place of pekuach nefesh, when you eat treifa food, is it hutcha or hutra? Does it mean to say that treifa food is like kosher? Or that even though it's treif, you're allowed to eat it? And the nafkamin, of course, is when it comes to the pnimius decay, to the elevation. The Alter Rebbe says here, heter gomor, which becomes heter. Alter Rebbe's paskening that when you eat treif in a ma'amad de matzah pekuach nefesh, the treif is kosher. It's not that the halachas of treif are pushed away, the treif is kosher. In other words, it's not just that it was mutter lagabe de gavra, it's mutter lagabe de chavtze as well. Aval, as opposed to a limud potato, the Zayhar was not talking about learning nigla. It was talking about the topics that nigla discusses. If a person is learning nigla, even if he's learned the laws of prohibited and permitted, unclean and unclean, and mishnayos, so brais and shabbat gemaru paskim. The mishnayos and the brais which I wrote in the gemaru paskim. That explain and bring clarity to Divreim, the words of the Chazal Allah Chalamaisa, says the Alter Rebbe. That's Torah. And you should know that Torah, even Nigla, Teresh Balpeh, Sheisvides, Malchus, Datzilis, it's Mamash Malchus, it's Elikus Gomer. Kedisa Bezer Kaddish became a Mitzvah, like it says in innumerable places. that Teira, side Teira Shebeksav, and even Teira Shebal and even Nigla Zalakus. Ubereish Tikunim. And the Hatagdama of the Tikkun is there, which we all say on Friday. It says Malchus Peh, that Malchus is the Eibishter's mouth, and it's Teira Shebal Peh, Karin Allah, do a Teira Shebal Peh. And we all know that Obatzilus Ivagamei Chad Behein, that Atzilus, the Ein Sof, is one with the Eidus and one with the Kalim. In other words, the Hainu Ein Sei Baruch Hu Misyachad B'Atzilus B'Tachas HaYichud. Atzilus is in a perpetual state of unity with Ein Sof. Shehu with the Tzedi V'Chamasei Hamaluj B'Dibori, that Hashem, which is Iyu, and Ratzon, which is Keseh, which goes on mitzvahs, and Chochmah, which is Teira, which goes on the Haskalah of Teira, are one with Ein Sof. Hamelubashim b'diburi, which then are revealed in the Eibishter's Dibur, which reveals Teira Shebal Peh, Shenikir Malchus, Hakalechot. So the Alter Rebbe says, don't misunderstand, that Ayah Mehem, there was never said that Nigat Teira is Klippa, Nigat Teira is Teira Salakus. It's the Metzias of the subject matter of Nigat Teira that's Klippa.